Hello, everyone. Tonight we are sinking gently into a story that starts in the soft glow of a hospital room, one of those rooms where the air feels heavy, almost sacred, like it's holding its breath for you. You probably won't survive this one, not without feeling a little something crack or warm or shift inside you. So, before you get too cocky, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing white noise, and let's get started tonight. My name is Zora, and before everything shattered, I was a quiet woman, soft-voiced, library worker, watcher of people, believer in small joys. I always felt like life could be kind if you were kind to it. Maybe that was naive. Or maybe that was my academically controversial belief that gentleness could protect you. I learned the hard way that it couldn't. I grew up in the historic Third Ward in Houston, raised mostly by my mother, who was already sick by the time I reached adulthood. She taught me to be tender, to listen more than I spoke, and to keep my dignity even when life tried to steal it. I never imagined that the greatest theft would come disguised as love. When I met Kaylin, everything felt like a slow, southern summer breeze, sweet, warm, deceptively calm. He came from wealth, carried himself like someone who'd never had to doubt anything. The Dumont family name floated in every conversation like a silk ribbon: real estate money, philanthropy, prestige, and I was just the girl who worked between dusty shelves and believed stories had the power to save us. 4 years later, I was in a hospital bed with a baby boy on my chest, my son, my whole reason to keep breathing, yet I'd never felt so alone. That room still haunts me sometimes. The white walls were too bright, the sheets too stiff, and the smell of disinfectant clung to everything. I remember the nurse telling me gently, "Sweetheart, he'll be here soon." But even she didn't believe it, because I'd been alone for the entire labor, 8 hours of gripping the sides of the bed, whispering prayers, whispering my mother's name, whispering hope. The door finally opened after everything was over. Kaylin walked in like he'd stepped out of a magazine-tailored suit, polished shoes, hair perfect, not a sign that he'd raced or worried or cared. Behind him floated his mother, Odette, with diamonds around her neck and ice in her eyes, and his sister Nyla, who looked at me the way someone looks at a stain on silk. He didn't say congratulations. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just stared at the baby. And I swear the whole atmosphere changed. It was as if someone had opened a freezer door. "What is this?" he asked. I thought he was teasing. At first he always used to tease, but there was nothing playful in his tone, just something sharp, something dangerous. "It's your son," I whispered. "Our son." His mother stepped forward. She didn't even try to hide her disgust. That is not a Dumont child. Her words sliced through me, no shouting, no drama, just a quiet cruelty that hurt more than any scream. I felt humiliation burn through my skin, but I held my baby closer. He was warm. He was mine. Kaylin pushed away from the bed, pacing, breathing heavy like he was trapped, and then he pointed at me. Actually pointed at me with a trembling hand. I refused to sign anything. That child does not carry my blood or my name. The room tilted. For a moment, I thought I was going to faint. Humiliation pooled around me like cold water until I could barely feel my fingers. And that's when the doctor entered, the same doctor who helped deliver my son. His expression was tight, like he already knew something no one else did. "I need to speak with you privately," he told Kaylin. But Kaylin refused. He stormed out with his mother and sister trailing behind him, leaving me there bleeding, shaking, half broken with my baby crying against my chest. The doctor closed the door gently and sat beside me. "Zora," he said quietly, "you need to prepare yourself. Something isn't adding up in the genetic screening. Your son's results don't match you or your husband." I froze. The world froze. "What are you saying?" He hesitated before answering. "I'm saying this child's biological father is someone close to your husband. Very close." Something fractured in me, then not one clean break, but a series of little cracks I would feel for years. I wasn't unfaithful. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't confused. But there was one night I remembered only in fragments, a bitter drink, a wave of dizziness, a strange fog, a door closing, footsteps I didn't recognize. And then nothing. Nothing at all. I looked down at my son, my sweet, fragile boy, and I knew in that moment that my life had split cleanly in two, the life before that hospital room and the life after. And the life after was the one I'd have to fight for. The morning after that hospital nightmare felt like waking up underwater, everything slow, muffled, too heavy to lift. I remember lying there, holding my son against my chest, feeling the rhythm of his tiny breaths like they were the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. My body ached from labor, but my soul felt bruised in places I didn't even know could hurt. A nurse came in just after sunrise. She had kind eyes, the kind that can break you without a single word. She looked at the empty doorway where Kaylin had disappeared the night before and sighed softly, as if she'd seen this story more times than she wanted to admit. "Do you have someone coming to get you, sweetheart?" I shook my head. The truth hung in the space like damp laundry, heavy, sad, and full of unspoken despair. She didn't ask again. She just helped me sit up, helped me dress, helped me steady myself. I remember her tying the back of my gown with such tenderness that my chest tightened. Funny how a simple act of care can feel more profound than any love I thought I had. By noon, they discharged me because they needed the bed. Hospitals don't wait for broken hearts, they only wait for paperwork. I stepped outside carrying my baby boy. Wrapped in a faded blanket the nurse had slipped into my bag. The sun felt too bright. The world felt too loud. Every passing car sounded like it knew my secrets. I ended up taking a bus back to the 3rd ward. It rattled down streets that smelled like home-fried catfish, old wood, humid air, but I felt like an alien stepping onto another planet. My mother's house stood there, small and worn, like a tired soldier that had fought too many storms. The windows were cracked, the porch sagged a little, but it was shelter, and at that moment, shelter was enough. I laid my son, my little Keon, on the bed and just whispered to him. I whispered things like, "I'm here. I won't leave you. We're going to figure this out." I didn't believe half of it yet, but I needed him to hear it. Later that night, when he finally slept, I sat by the window trying to remember the night that changed everything. Not the night of the birth, the night months earlier, the night I couldn't fully recall. The expensive wine, the dizziness, the footsteps in the hallway, a shadow leaning over me, a hand brushing my hair, someone whispering something I couldn't understand. I felt sick, truly sick. That kind of stomach-churning realization that maybe something awful didn't happen, it was done to me. But trauma has a way of making you doubt your own memories. That's what makes it so academically controversial whether the mind forgets to protect you or to punish you. Either way, I knew one thing. What happened wasn't love, and it wasn't a mistake. It was something darker. The truth was hiding just outside the edges of my memory, like a figure in the dark, waiting for me to turn my head. 2 days later, while I was heating water on the stove, someone knocked on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My stomach tightened. Old traumatic fear shows up before logic does. I opened it just a crack. It was Mrs. Ketta, the neighbor who practically helped raise half the block. She was short, sturdy, with silver hair pulled into a bun so tight it could have survived a tornado. "I heard you were back," she said, not asking, just stating. "Bring that baby here. Let me see him." I didn't even argue. I placed Keon gently in her arms. She looked him over like he was the most precious thing she'd ever held. Then she whispered, "This child got God's hands on him." Something inside me loosened, just a little. "Come eat," she said. "You look like a whisper could blow you away." That night in her kitchen, with creaky floors and mismatched chairs, I finally let myself cry, not pretty tears, not graceful ones, ugly, trembling, shoulder-shaking sobs. She placed a warm hand on my back. "Tell me everything." And I did. I told her about Kalen's rage, his mother's cruelty, the doctor's revelation, the genetic results that didn't make sense. I even told her about the foggy night. I couldn't remember clearly the night I'd brushed off as stress or exhaustion. When I finished, she didn't gasp. She didn't patronize me. She just nodded with a kind of slow, heavy sadness and said, "Baby, you ain't crazy. Something happened, and it wasn't your fault." I didn't believe her yet, but I held on to those words like a rope in the dark. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Keon wheezing lightly in his sleep. His breaths were shallow, uneven. Panic shot through me so fast it made my fingers tingle. I rushed him to a nearby clinic, my heart pounding with every step. The doctor there examined him, frowning as he listened to Keon's breathing. He ordered blood work, then sat me down with a solemn expression. "Your son is showing signs of a metabolic disorder," he said. "Something inherited, something rare." Inherited? That word hit me like a hammer. He continued, "It doesn't match what we expect from you genetically, or based on the information you provided your husband." The room blurred, my ears ringing. There it was again, the truth circling closer. "Miss, you'll need to find out who his biological father is," the doctor said softly. "His life may depend on it." My world split open. Not with fear this time, but with rage. Quiet, simmering, woman-born rage. The kind that doesn't scream, the kind that plans, the kind that rises. I walked home holding Keon tight, and I swear, something inside me shifted, broke open, rewired itself. That was the beginning of my preparation. The beginning of my fight. The beginning of the woman I was about to become. I used to think that survival was quiet, that it meant shrinking, staying small, keeping your head down until the world decided to be gentle again. But surviving as a mother, that's war. A slow, steady kind. The kind where you fight with empty pockets and trembling hands. But you fight anyway, because someone tiny is depending on you to stand upright even when your knees won't stop shaking. The night after the clinic visit, I couldn't sleep. I watched Keon's chest rise and fall in shallow, uneven breaths. Every sound he made felt like a warning. Every whimper tightened something inside me until I thought I might crack. At one point, I whispered, "I'm not losing you. Not you. Not after everything." He blinked at me with those big, solemn eyes of his eyes that somehow held more truth than the grown men who had lied to me. The next morning, I wrapped him in a borrowed blanket and walked to the Legal Aid Center. It sat in a rundown strip mall between a pawn shop and a nail salon, a place where the fluorescent lights hummed louder than the voices. That's where I met Imani, a young attorney with tired eyes and box braids that fell over a stack of chaotic case files. She looked up at me like she'd seen women like me before, but she still cared enough to listen. "Tell me everything," she said. And her tone made something inside me unclench. I told her about the hospital, the accusations, the humiliation, the doctor's warning, and the night I couldn't fully remember. She didn't interrupt. She didn't blink. When I finished, she tapped her pen against a legal pad and exhaled. Zora, this isn't simple, but it's not impossible. I took a shaky breath. I need him, Kaylin, to be held responsible. If not as a husband, then as a human being. She nodded slowly. We can file for child support, but we'll need a verified paternity test. And you said he refused to sign the birth certificate. He destroyed it, I whispered. The shame tasted metallic. Amani's expression softened. Then we'll take this step by step. She started writing, her pen gliding confidently. Meanwhile, Kian began fussing in my arms. She paused, looked at him for a long moment, then said something that almost made me cry again. He looks like he's fighting so hard. Let's fight with him. With her help, I requested a new DNA panel. The results were rushed for medical reasons. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope in the hallway outside the legal aid office. The test didn't match me. It didn't match Kaylin. It matched a first-degree relative of his. My breath caught. A father, a brother. Someone in the Dumont bloodline. I folded the paper slowly, as if gentleness could soften the truth. It couldn't. That afternoon, I walked to the Dumont mansion not because I wanted to, but because I needed to look that family in the eye. Needed to see who trembled, who lied, who avoided my gaze. The gate guard froze when he saw me, baby in arms, hair pinned messily, cheeks hollowed from stress. I must have looked like a ghost returning for unfinished business. I didn't ring the bell. I walked straight through the front door. And there they were, Odette sipping tea like the queen of winter, Nyla scrolling on her phone, Kaylin sitting rigidly with a glass of whiskey even though it was barely afternoon. They all froze when they saw me. Before anyone could speak, I placed the folded test results on the coffee table. I know, I said quietly. Odette stiffened. Nyla looked away. Kaylin swallowed hard. You know what he asked? Voice cracking with a fear he tried to hide. That the father of my child, I said, is someone in this house. A silence so thick it felt alive. Odette stood slowly, adjusting her silk blouse. You have no proof. The DNA says otherwise. Her mask cracked for half a second too long. Kaylin looked at me like he wanted to speak, but some truth choked him. Somewhere deeper in the house, a door closed, heavy, final. And suddenly, it made sense. Some memories return like shadows, first blurry, distorted, unsure. But that night, the one I had tried to explain away, it wasn't a dream, wasn't stress, wasn't imagination. Someone had been in my home when I couldn't move. Someone with Dumont blood. Someone whose footsteps didn't match Kaylin's. I stepped back, clutching Kian closer. I won't be silent, I said. Odette's eyes went cold, like a chandelier dropping ice. You should be. She didn't know it yet, but those words only added fuel. Because I wasn't afraid anymore, not for myself, but for the little boy breathing softly against my shoulder. I left the mansion walking tall, not because I was brave, but because I couldn't afford not to be. When I got outside, I saw a shadow leaning against the side gate, young, tense, eyes filled with guilt. It was Ocean, Kaylin's younger brother. He didn't speak at first, just handed me a small envelope. You're not crazy, he whispered, and you're not alone. Then he walked away. My hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside was a single line, written in messy ink. He watches everyone, especially when they're alone. My blood ran cold. Not he, the brother. He, the father. Even the ink felt scared. That night, fear tried to return, but right behind it was anger. And right behind that was something stronger, something rising inside me like a quiet storm. A woman who has been pushed too far becomes someone entirely different. And I was becoming her, Before that week, I had never felt hatred. Not real hatred. I had felt anger. Yes, sadness, humiliation, fear. But hatred, the kind that blooms quietly, like a poisonous flower you don't remember planting, that was new. And the strange thing about hatred is that it doesn't roar. It whispers. It whispers patiently, almost tenderly, like it has all the time in the world. That night after Ocean slipped me that envelope, I sat by the cracked window of Mrs. Ketta's spare bedroom, rocking Keon slowly as he slept. The street lamp outside flickered, casting an amber glow across his cheeks. I traced a finger over his tiny eyebrows, so soft, so perfect, and something unexplainable tightened in my chest. "He watches everyone," the note had said. Everyone, especially when alone. Ocean didn't sign his name, didn't explain more, but he didn't have to. There was only one he in that house who made entire rooms freeze, whose silence carried threats, whose shadow could swallow a whole doorway. Sterling Dumont, Kaylin's father. The patriarch, the king in a house built on intimidation, a man who didn't need to shout because the world bent before he ever raised his voice. A man I had once served coffee to. A man whose presence had made me uncomfortable long before I had the words to call it what it was. I remembered it clearly now, the night I had felt dizzy for no reason. The wine glass I didn't ask for. The way the hallway lights had blurred as I tried to return to the guest room. And then, nothing. Just a blank space I had been too ashamed to relive. Until now. The next morning, Imani met me outside the clinic with a stack of documents and a look that told me she hadn't slept. "We have enough to move forward," she said softly. "But Zora, this won't be easy. You're going up against a man who has avoided accountability his entire life. Then he won't see me coming." That made her pause. The quiet tremor in my voice wasn't fear, it was resolve. We sat on a cold concrete bench while I fed Keon. The sun was warm, but the wind bit at our faces like it hadn't made up its mind yet. Imani tapped one of the folders. "This is the formal complaint. Once we file, his attorneys will come after you hard. They'll say you lied, that you're unstable, that you're looking for a payout, that the clinic made mistakes, anything to discredit you." I brushed a curl away from Keon's forehead. Let them talk. The truth doesn't need permission. "And the other thing," she hesitated, "a lot of people will ask why you didn't speak up sooner." I swallowed hard. That familiar ache bloomed in my throat. "Because I didn't remember," I said quietly. "Because I didn't want to believe what my body already knew. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought it was my fault." Imani nodded. "That's why he picked you. Women like you, quiet, respectful, hardworking, are easy to blame and harder to believe." She paused before adding, "And that's exactly why you're the one who can destroy him." That afternoon, we filed the complaint. It was strange watching a clerk stamp a stack of papers that could shatter a dynasty. She did it casually, like she was stamping a parking ticket. Meanwhile, I felt like my entire past, present, and future were vibrating inside my ribcage. We stepped outside to the courthouse steps, and that's when I saw them: cameras, reporters, microphones, flashing lights, and questions being shouted. I froze, instinctively pulling Keon closer. Imani stepped forward like a shield. One microphone reached me. "Ms. Harlow, is it true the Dumont heir is not the father?" Another, "Do you want financial compensation? Is this about money?" Another, "Are you accusing Sterling Dumont of misconduct?" Their voices blended into a static buzz. I wanted to disappear, but then I looked at Keon. His little face, his quiet breaths. I straightened. "This isn't about money," I said softly but firmly. "This is about truth, and truth doesn't hide." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I held Keon higher, like a small banner. and my son deserves the truth. That moment went viral. But back at the Dumont estate, in a room with velvet drapes and a marble fireplace, Sterling Dumont was watching me on a large flat-screen TV. He stood very still, his jaw tightening with each word I spoke. Beside him, Mrs. Odette trembled. Ocean lingered near the doorway, pale. Kalen sat on the sofa with his head in his hands. And Sterling finally spoke, voice low and venomous. She thinks she can challenge me, a beat. She has no idea what I'm capable of. Ocean swallowed. Maybe she knows exactly what you're capable of. Dad. Silence. Dangerous silence. Sterling turned slowly toward his youngest son, like a lion who'd just been interrupted mid-hunt. You forget your place. And you forget yours, Ocean replied softly. But his eyes never lifted. That night, someone slipped another envelope under my door. Imani wasn't there. Mrs. Keta was asleep. The neighborhood was quiet. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph. I gasped. My knees buckled. It was me, at the Dumont house. Unconscious, in a guest bedroom I had never slept in. And standing in the doorway was a shadow I recognized, even though the face was hidden in the dim light. Sterling. Written beneath the photo were 4 words in shaky handwriting. You weren't supposed to wake. My breath left my body all at once. But instead of fear, I felt something else bloom inside me. Not hatred, not anger, power. A kind of ancient power that women are forced to grow when the world pushes them too far. I looked down at my sleeping baby, and I whispered, "They're about to learn what waking up looks like." There are moments in life when fear shifts, when it stops being a cage and becomes fuel. That photograph did exactly that. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt something sharpen inside me, like the blurry edges of my memory finally clicked into place, forming a shape too painful to look at directly, yet too necessary to turn away from. The next morning, Imani showed up at the house before sunrise, still in her cardigan, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, holding 2 coffees and a face tighter than federal paperwork. "You saw it?" she asked before I even opened my mouth. I nodded. Someone wanted me to. She exhaled slowly, gripping the folder against her chest. "This isn't just evidence. This is a warning." "Or a confession," I whispered. We sat at the small kitchen table, me rocking Keon in one arm, her analyzing the photo under the dim yellow bulb that flickered occasionally, like it had its own opinions. "This wasn't taken on a phone," she said. "Too clean, too centered." "Security camera?" I asked. She shook her head. "Angles too intimate. This is a handheld camera." A chill ran through my spine. "Someone in that house took this," I said. Imani didn't contradict me. She rubbed her forehead, thinking. "Who gave it to you?" she asked. "I don't know." But I did know. A part of me knew. Ocean. The way he'd lingered near the gate. The way his eyes stayed sad even when his mouth tried to form a brave line. The way he whispered. "You're not alone." But whether it was him or someone trying to frame him, I didn't yet understand. Before we could say anything more, I heard a knock on the door. Gentle, cautious, but urgent. Imani moved like a bodyguard. Stepping in front of me, she peeked through the blinds. "It's Kalen." My stomach tightened. I opened the door just enough to see him standing on the stoop with his shoulders slumped, his suit wrinkled, tie loose, eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the polished man who once walked into the library where we met. He looked human, broken, and part of me hated that a small slice of compassion still tried to rise at the sight. He lifted his hands in surrender. "I'm not here to fight. His voice cracked. "Zora, I need to talk to you." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Keon wouldn't hear the tremble in his father's voice. "What do you want?" I asked. He ran a shaky hand through his hair. "My mother, she's losing it. My father, he's preparing something big. He's calling lawyers, judges, threatening anyone who talks." "Of course he is." Kaylin swallowed. "Zora, listen, you're not safe." A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "I've never been safe." "Kaylin?" "No," he whispered. "You don't understand. Last night, I heard him talking on the phone. He said he'd fix the situation permanently." A coldness clamped around my ribs. "Fix?" I repeated, meaning what? He shook his head. "I don't know, but you know him. You know what he's capable of." I stared at him, really stared. "You're only scared now because you finally see the monster you were raised by." Kaylin swallowed again, but he didn't deny it. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said something that cracked the coldness between us. "I should have believed you." I looked away, too late. He nodded. "I know, but I'm trying to fix it." "Fixing it," I said quietly, "means telling the truth under oath." His face fell. "Zora, he will destroy me." "You destroyed us." That landed hard. He lowered his gaze. "If speaking the truth protects you and protects the baby, then I'll do it." For the first time, he met my eyes without pride, without defense. Just a man stripped of illusions. But before he walked away, he added, "And Zora, protect Ocean." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" Kaylin stepped back slowly, looking over his shoulder as if someone might be watching. "He knows too much," he whispered, "and in our family, knowing too much has consequences." When he left, the weight of his warning settled like a stone in my chest. Imani came outside with the photograph in her hand. "We need a plan," she said calmly, like we weren't standing in the middle of a storm. "We need more than a plan," I murmured. "We need an army." The next few days were a blur of clinics, legal filings, whispers, and constant glances over my shoulder. Women started reaching out to Imani women who had worked in the Dumont house, housekeepers who'd been dismissed quietly, drivers who had seen too much, a nanny who once resigned abruptly and moved out of state. One message read, "I left because he entered my room one night. I pretended to be asleep because I thought staying still would keep me safe." Another, "I signed an NDA, but I still have the bruises in my mind." Each story added another layer to the truth, another brick in the wall we were building. This wasn't just my battle. It never had been. But even an army needs one spark, one loud, undeniable catalyst. And that spark came 3 days later when the door to the legal aid office slammed open and Ocean stumbled inside, breathless, face pale. "Zora!" he gasped. "You need to come with me." Imani stepped forward. "What's wrong?" Ocean's hands shook as he held up his phone. "It's my father," he said, voice cracking. He's destroying evidence. All of it. Tonight?" My pulse pounded. "What evidence?" Ocean looked at me with eyes so full of fear and regret that it almost broke me. "Everything," he whispered. "The recordings, the footage, the files, and the list of names." Imani grabbed her purse. "Where is he?" "At the old estate office," Ocean said. "It's the only place he keeps things he doesn't want my mother to see." I stood up, adjusting Keon against my shoulder. Imani grabbed my wrist. "Zora, you're not coming." I am. No, if it's dangerous. If my child's truth is inside that building, I said quietly, then I'm walking through the front door. Ocean nodded once, with a solemnity far too heavy for someone his age. Then hurry, he said. Because he's not just destroying files. He hesitated. He's waiting for you. We drove through the city in silence, the kind that feels alive, breathing, listening, waiting. Streetlights blurred past the windows like streaks of gold. Every time one flickered overhead, it illuminated the fear on Ocean's face, the tight line of Imani's jaw, and the small rise and fall of Kian's chest as he slept, nestled against me. I held him tightly, not just because he was my child, but because he was the living proof of a truth someone desperately wanted buried. Rain had started to fall, thin at first, then heavier, tapping the roof of the car with a nervous rhythm. Houston rain always feels personal, like the sky is warning you to turn back, but I didn't listen. I couldn't. Ocean drove like someone who knew the road too well and his father's rage even better. He pulled into a nearly empty parking lot in front of a long abandoned 2-story building, the old Dumont Estate office. The windows were dark, the walls were stained with time, but a faint light glowed from a back room. Imani killed the engine. Zora, she whispered, if I tell you to run, you run. I didn't argue. Instead, I wrapped Kian tighter in his blanket and stepped out into the damp night. The air was heavier here, thick with mold and secrets, the kind of place where truth goes to rot. Ocean led us toward the side entrance, looking over his shoulder every few steps. He wasn't afraid for himself, I could tell. He was afraid for us. Inside, he said softly, pulling open the rusted door. It creaked like something out of an old mystery film. We stepped into the darkness. The silence hit first, then a humming sound, low, mechanical. Server room, Imani whispered. He's wiping everything. The hallway stretched ahead, lit only by a sliver of yellow light seeping out from the last door on the left. I could hear movement footsteps, something being dragged, then the unmistakable crackle of burning paper. Imani stopped us with an arm stretched out. Stay behind me, she said. Her voice didn't waver. We reached the door, slightly ajar. The smell of smoke seeped through the gap. Inside, the glow of screens flickered across the room. Sterling Dumont stood with his back to us, cool, composed, an unbothered devil. Stacks of documents lay scattered around him. Several were already burning in a metal bin. The light from the flames danced on his face, sharpening his features until he didn't look like a man anymore, just the silhouette of a monster wearing arrogance like a tailored suit. Ocean stepped forward before Imani could stop him. Dad! Sterling didn't turn. Leave. His voice was so calm it made my stomach twist. Dad, stop this! You shouldn't be here, Sterling said, still facing the screens. We're done protecting you. That made him pause. Slowly, he turned around, smoothing a wrinkle in his shirt as if this were a normal evening. His cold eyes found mine instantly. So, he murmured, the girl from the library finally grew teeth. I didn't flinch. I'm here for the truth, I said. Every piece you tried to bury. He chuckled lightly, shaking his head as if disappointed in a slow student. The truth, he stepped closer. Truth is, whatever the powerful say it is. Imani moved slightly in front of me. Not anymore, she said sharply. Those files belong to a criminal investigation. Step aside. Sterling ignored her. He walked toward me, studying my face the way a collector studies an artifact he once owned. This child, he said, gesturing lazily toward Kian, was supposed to be nothing but a lesson. a mistake erased by time. I instinctively pulled Keon closer. Sterling smirked. Nature, of course, had other plans. His gaze slid to Ocean, his youngest, the quiet one, the one he never paid attention to. Maybe that's why Ocean found the courage to speak. "You hurt her," Ocean said, voice shaking, "and you hurt Aaliyah, and you hurt so many others." Sterling looked at his son like he was an insect. "You know nothing." "I know enough," Ocean said. "I know you drugged her." Imani inhaled sharply. Sterling's jaw tightened, just for a second, just long enough. "Ah," he said quietly, "so you finally put the pieces together." Something in me snapped not into panic, but into clarity. "Why did you target me?" I whispered. Sterling tilted his head. "Because you were convenient." He said it with the same tone someone uses to describe a misplaced notebook. "Because Kaylin loved you," he continued, "and I needed him broken. A man can't lead if he's distracted, emotional, weak. And my son," my voice trembled despite me, "what was he to you?" Sterling's eyes flicked down to the bundle in my arms. "A problem." Imani stepped closer to him. "That problem is evidence. And this room is full of it." Sterling laughed soft, tired, mocking. "You think any judge will convict me?" he asked. "Do you know how many people owe me their careers, their freedom? Every file in this room is leverage, insurance." "Not tonight," Imani said. And then everything happened at once. Ocean lunged forward to grab the burning bin. Sterling grabbed his arm, shoving him hard. Ocean stumbled but found his footing. Imani pulled out her phone to record. Sterling swiped it out of her hand, sending it flying across the floor. I stepped back instinctively, shielding Kian with my body. Sterling turned toward me. "You," he said softly, "were supposed to stay silent." "No," I whispered. "You just expected me to stay afraid." His expression shifted just slightly, like he realized the pieces on the board were moving without him. And then sirens. Loud, close, growing. Sterling's head whipped toward the door. Ocean exhaled in a shudder. I called them. Sterling stared at his son, really stared, like he was seeing him for the first time. "You betrayed me." Ocean swallowed. "You betrayed all of us." Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. Flashlights cut through the dark. Sterling stood perfectly still, as if deciding whether to flee, attack, or simply smirk his way out of this like he always had. The door burst open. "Hands where we can see them." Sterling didn't move. He just smiled, cold, certain. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "you have no idea who you're arresting." A detective stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Dumont," he said, holding up a folder. "We do." Behind him, 2 federal agents appeared. Imani's breath caught. Ocean covered his mouth. I felt my knees weaken. This wasn't just local police. This was bigger. The detective looked straight at him. "We have new evidence. Multiple victims, financial crimes, obstruction, attempted flight, and a recorded confession." Sterling froze. "Recorded what?" Ocean's voice cracked as he whispered, "I recorded everything you said to me." Sterling turned to his son, the same son he had always dismissed, ignored, belittled. Betrayal twisted his features. "You," he growled, stepping forward. But officers grabbed him before he could take another step. They forced him to the ground, hands behind his back, zip ties locking with a sharp snap. Sterling Dumont, untouchable, invincible, feared, was finally on his knees. He still tried to lift his head to look at me. "You think you've won," he spat. "You think this ends with me." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No," I said softly. "This ends with the truth." As they dragged him out of the office, the smoke from the burning papers hung in the air like the last breath of a dying lie. Ocean collapsed onto a chair, shaking. Imani retrieved her phone, wiped dust from the screen. And I held Kian closer, whispering into his hair, "It's over, baby. It's finally over." But deep down, I knew. We had only shattered the monster. Now came the hardest part, rebuilding what he tried to destroy. I wish I could tell you that the moment Sterling Dumont was dragged out of that old building, the world suddenly became lighter, that justice washed over us like warm rain, and the fear melted away in a single exhale. But life never ties its endings neatly, not even when the villain is handcuffed on live television. The next morning, Houston felt different. Rain had rinsed the streets clean, but the air buzzed with a kind of pressure I felt in my chest. I barely slept. I sat in the rocking chair with Kian curled against me, listening to his tiny breaths, letting each one remind me that he was real, safe, alive. My son had survived a man who tried to erase him before he could walk, and now the world knew what that man really was. But the world's attention is a tricky thing. It can save you or swallow you. When the sun rose, my phone began vibrating nonstop. Missed calls from unknown numbers, notifications popping like popcorn reporters, strangers, old acquaintances, distant family members, people with opinions they had never been invited to share. I ignored all of it. I had no space for noise. Not yet. Imani called at 7 a.m. "Zora," she said gently, "news outlets are camped outside your building." "Already?" "Since 5. I laughed in that way you laugh when you're too tired to cry, too alert to sleep. "What do they want?" I asked, though I already knew. "A statement. Your statement." I held Kian tighter. I don't owe anyone anything. Imani paused. "You don't? But people are listening now, and if you speak carefully, you could protect yourself and him." I knew she was right. Public truth could be a shield as much as a sword, but I also knew how easily stories get twisted, turned into entertainment, consumed like gossip by strangers who don't feel your bruises, don't know your nights. "I'll think about it," I whispered. "For now," she said, "don't leave your apartment. I'm sending someone to escort you." I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off. "No arguments. You are a mother now, and visibility puts you at risk." A knock at the door made me jump. "Zora?" Imani said quickly. "Don't open for anyone unless they identify themselves." My breath caught as I walked toward the peephole. My heart stopped. Standing there, hood up, drenched from rain, eyes dark with exhaustion, was Kaylin. Not Kofi. Kaylin. Some people are storms, some people are warnings, and some people are unfinished sentences. I cracked the door open just enough. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. His voice broke. "Can I see him?" Kian stirred in my arms, sensing tension like all babies do. I moved slightly away, creating space between my son and his father. "You should be with your mother," I said, "or your brother." Kaylin shook his head. "They're not my family anymore, not after last night." He rubbed a hand over his face, water dripping from his hair. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "I told the agents I want to testify," he said, "against him." My breath hitched. "You really mean that?" He nodded. "I heard the recording again," he whispered. "The things he said, the way he laughed. I can't let him hide behind his name or his money, and I can't let you face this alone." I didn't know what to feel. A small, buried part of me had once dreamed of a life where he fought for us, but dreams age, shift, dissolve. People change too, sometimes too late, sometimes just enough. Before I could answer, Kian reached out toward him. tiny fingers stretching like soft branches seeking light. Kalen's face shattered. He didn't step forward. He didn't assume the right. He just stared as though his heart had been placed in my hands. "I know he's not mine," he whispered, "not by blood. But last night made me realize I don't care." Those words, they were soft, trembling, but real. He wasn't the arrogant man from the mansion. He wasn't the boy raised by a monster. He was simply a man who had lost too much and finally decided to stop running. "Come inside," I murmured. He stepped in, but only after removing his shoe's small gesture, but meaningful, respectful, different. We sat on the old couch, rain pressed against the windows like someone knocking softly from the other side. Kian sat on my lap, but his eyes were glued to Kalen. "Can I?" Kalen asked, gesturing with hesitant fingers. I nodded. He lifted Kian slowly, carefully, as if holding a fragile universe. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Kian smiled, a small, wobbly, perfect smile. Kalen let out a shaky breath, tears slipping down without shame. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "No," I said quietly, "but you can earn it." He looked up at me, eyes raw. "Tell me how—" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Amani. "Zora," she said urgently, "the judge just scheduled a hearing for Sterling, today, and they want your statement." My stomach tightened. "What time?" 2 hours. I looked at my son, at Kalen, at the rain, at the small room where I had tried to build a life out of nothing. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's finish this." Kalen stood. "I'm coming with you." I hesitated, and for a moment, I saw everything our past, our mistakes, his anger, my silence, the miles of pain stretching between us. But I also saw the way he held Kian, the way his shoulders had shifted, the way his voice no longer carried entitlement but responsibility. "You can come," I finally said, "but you listen, not speak." He nodded. "Whatever you need." We left the apartment quietly. Reporters swarmed like bees, shouting questions we ignored. Kalen shielded us with his body, a small but meaningful gesture. Ocean met us at the car, offering a brief, tight smile. "You ready?" he asked. I wasn't, not really. But survivors rarely wait for readiness. They move anyway, they speak anyway, they fight anyway. "For him," I whispered, looking at Kian, "always." The courthouse was waiting. And this time, I wouldn't walk in as a victim. I would walk in as a woman who had carved power out of pain. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold air, a mix that always reminded me of places where truth goes to be measured, weighed, and sometimes suffocated. But as the automatic doors parted and we stepped inside, I felt something different this time, a shift, a hum, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Kalen walked behind me, carrying Kian's diaper bag like it was sacred. Ocean stayed close on my left, his shoulders tense but steady, and Amani moved ahead of us with long, certain strides, like a woman marching into battle with victory already written behind her eyes. The hall was packed. Reporters, Tamara Cruz, women holding signs with messages that made my throat tighten. "Justice for survivors, no more silence, we believe you." And then I saw them faces I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Women who had sent letters. Women who had whispered me too into voice notes because they were too afraid to say it out loud. Women who had been trapped in the same shadows Sterling had built his life on. They stepped aside as we passed, forming a narrow path. I wasn't expecting the clapping. Soft at first, then louder. a wave of hands and voices rising behind us. Kaylin froze. Ocean froze. Even Imani blinked rapidly before clearing her throat and whispering, "Keep walking, Zora." But I stopped anyway, just for a moment. Because it hit me those hands weren't clapping for a hero. They were clapping for a survivor who had refused to stay quiet. I took a deep breath, adjusted Kian in my arms, and kept walking. Inside the courtroom, the air felt colder, sharper. Sterling sat at the defense table, flanked by two attorneys who looked like they'd aged 10 years overnight. He was in a suit again, his posture perfect, his face carved from stone. But his eyes, he looked smaller, not physically. Something inside him had shrunk, like arrogance with a punctured lung. He watched me walk past as if I were a stain he couldn't scrub out. I didn't look away. Judge Halprin, a woman known for her sharp rulings and sharper questions, entered the room, and everyone stood. She glanced at Sterling, then at me, then at the stack of evidence piled on the prosecution's table. "This hearing," she began, "will address whether Mr. Sterling Dumont's bail will be revoked due to flight risk, witness intimidation, and destruction of evidence." Her gaze landed on me again. "And whether the testimony presented today supports the continuation of criminal proceedings. Does?" Imani squeezed my hand gently. "You're ready," she whispered. And I walked to the witness stand, feeling the eyes of the world press against my back. Kian slept soundly against Kaylin's shoulder now, a reminder that even in rooms full of monsters, hope can nap through the noise. The clerk asked if I swore to tell the truth. I said yes. My voice didn't shake. "Ms. Hale," the prosecutor began, "can you describe the events that led you to file your complaint against the defendant?" I nodded and looked straight ahead, not at Sterling. And I told it all. The night I felt dizzy in the house, the morning I woke up confused, the pregnancy, the birth, the rejection, the humiliation, the anonymous letter, the audio, the investigation, Aaliyah, everything. Every detail that I had swallowed for too long, I now placed gently but firmly in the room, like shards of a broken mirror. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because hurting is not the same as breaking. At one point during my testimony, Sterling leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirking like a man watching a child perform. But when I reached the part about the genetic match and said his name, something in his jaw twitched so hard I thought it might crack. The prosecutor turned to him. "Mr. Dumont, do you wish to respond?" His attorney whispered urgently, but Sterling stood. Arrogance is an illness. His was terminal. "Your Honor," he began, "this woman is lying for attention, for money. My son is..." He gestured toward Kaylin, who immediately stood holding Kian protectively. "I'm not your son anymore," Kaylin said quietly. The room erupted in murmurs. Judge Halprin slammed her gavel. "Order." But Kaylin kept speaking, voice steady and heartbreakingly clear. "You heard her. You heard Aaliyah. And for years I believed you when you said the world lied about you. But it was you. It was always you." Sterling's face drained of color. "You ungrateful?" "Sit down, Mr. Dumont," the judge snapped. He sat. For the first time in his life, Sterling Dumont obeyed. Imani approached the stand next, presenting the recorded confession. The court fell silent, every person leaning forward as Sterling's own voice filled the room. She was convenient, a pawn. I wanted to break him. No one will believe her. I can take anything I want. Even the judge's pen froze mid-stroke. When the audio ended, Even Sterling looked shaken, as if he didn't recognize the monster speaking. Or maybe he finally did. The prosecutor asked one final question. "Ms. Hale, what do you want from this court today?" I looked at Kian, then at the women behind me, then at the man who once decided my life didn't matter. "I want the truth to matter again," I said softly. "For every woman who didn't survive long enough to sit here, for every child who was born into silence, and for my son, who deserves to grow up without fear of the man who fathered him." The courtroom fell so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights hum. Judge Halprin closed her files. Based on the evidence presented, the witness testimony, and the defendant's documented attempt to flee the country, bail is revoked. Mr. Dumont will remain in federal custody pending trial on all charges. Sterling's lawyers stood, shouting objections. He didn't. He just stared at me, rage, disbelief, and something strangely hollow simmering beneath his skin. "Ms. Hale," the judge added, "your courage today is acknowledged and appreciated by this court." I bowed my head. When the gavel struck, chaos erupted. Reporters rushed out. Attorneys began arguing. Security guided people toward the exits. But I stayed still. Kalen approached slowly, Kian sleeping in his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "No," I said, touching my son's cheek. "We did." Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds parted slightly, just enough for sunlight to spill across the courthouse steps like a blessing. Women waited there, applauding quietly, reaching for my hands, hugging me gently, thanking me for speaking. Some cried, some trembled, some stood silent, nodding, because silence was their language for pain. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. Kian squirmed awake, blinking at the bright sky. I kissed his forehead. "It's over," I whispered. But deep inside, I knew. It was really the beginning, a new one, a clean one I would write myself. With him, with strength, with truth. Always truth.